We will write code in 3 separate files. In index.html, I create a basic web page markup. I give it some title. I link style CSS file. And I create HTML5 canvas element with an ID of canvas1. And I also link script.js file, which will contain all our JavaScript logic. In style CSS, I do so-called global reset to make sure the project looks the same across different browsers. Because each browser has different default margins and paddings, I use asterisk selector to target all elements on the page, and I set margin and padding on everything to 0 pixels. I will also set box size into border box, which will make sure that elements padding and borders are included in its total width and height. I take canvas element and I give it border 5 pixels solid black. I want to center it exactly in the middle of the page vertically and horizontally. One of the ways to do that with CSS is to give it position absolute. I set its top position to 50%, left to 50%, and transform translate to -50% of the element's size. This will make sure that canvas is always centered. I will also give it a background color. Maybe this one that matches the background artwork we will use a bit later. So, after a simple basic setup inside index.html and style CSS, we move into script.js. All JavaScript logic for this game will be written here inside this file. I create an event listener for load event. Notice that we call it on built-in JavaScript window object, which represents the browser's window. Load event fires when the whole page has been loaded, including all dependent resources such as style sheets and images. We need to do this because we will use a lot of graphics in this project and they can take some time to load. If you're trying to draw an image with JavaScript, remember that you always have to wait for that image to be fully loaded before you run the JavaScript code that depends on that image. I usually like to do HTML canvas setup like this. Custom variable I call for example canvas will store the reference to canvas element. I point it towards that element using getElementById. I give it an ID of canvas1. Now I need so-called drawing context. It is a built-in object that contains all methods and properties that allow us to draw and animate colors, shapes, and other graphics on HTML canvas. To create it, we need to call a special built-in getContext method on a variable that holds a reference to canvas element. So I say canvas.getContext, and then I need to pass it identifier. Sometimes we call this argument a context type. We can pass it 2D or WebGL here. WebGL represents 3-dimensional rendering context. Today we will work with 2D. Now I access width property on canvas from line 3 and I set it to 500 pixels. Height will be 500 as well. As you can see, 500 pixels is wider than my current browser size. For that reason, I also like to declare max width property and I set it to 100%. That way, the element will scale down until it's fully visible in the available browser area. I also declare max height in case the restricting factor is the height of browser window. Doing this will make sure we can always see the entire canvas element even when the browser window is too small. I will zoom out a bit to adjust my workplace for this tutorial. I set canvas width to a larger value and keep my browser window small. Canvas element will scale down to make sure it's fully visible.